Hello, I'm Existence CD, and yeah, I haven't posted in forever, but I am now. We have another situation here on somebody going back on their word, and why this is significant is because I used to know this person, and they were a good associate of mine. If you don't know who I'm referring to somebody known as Paper Cash Sir. You might know them if you're a viewer of my channel from the stream that I did with him on Monarchy, where I went over that. And I mostly was the one talking for the majority of the stream, which is fine, I don't really mind that. But it's going to be a little bit significant for this video as we go into Paper Cash Sir and all of the crazy crap here. So, I made an argumentation letter where I said, Paper Cash Sir made his profile recently a picture of a Vaporeon. This was an issue for me because I associate with him and also had him on my server. If you reverse image search his profile picture with Google Images, it takes 3 skulls on the front page to find suggestive art. Image 2, which is this one right here. Furthermore, you can track down the site to an anime site that also has anime furry content on it. This is something I do not want to be associated with at all, especially potentially publicly scandalizing people. Not only this, but when he first had that as his profile picture, people in his own server pointed it out, and obviously the sexual nature of the Pokemon in the fandom. Regardless of if it was joking or not, people recognize this, and this is a prime example of what guilty by association looks like. So basically what that's talking about is people literally recognized on his own server that there was he had a Vaporeon profile picture, and he didn't really do anything about it. He just played it off as a joke. And you're going to see that as a recurring theme, as this is not the only case I'm going to be pointing at. He actually has a history of doing this. And actually, he's even done something even worse recently that I can point at. But even if you don't really agree with me on all of this, I gave an alternative to that. So even if you don't really care about guilty by association, there's Paper Cash Sir admitting that he is immoral himself when I confronted him with it, which is a pretty bad look, I would say. And then there's him just admitting that when I was saying that he's making the same mistakes as Raxo, Tom Sand, and every other of those anti-furry creators, he's just saying, yeah. But the thing is here, he claims to be anti-degenerate, and he doesn't want to claim that he's like those creators and that he's doing those mistakes. He doesn't want to do that, and he doesn't admit it to his members either. He doesn't admit that to his server members. His server members, he actually painted me to them as somebody. He made some really bad examples of guilty by association. Nobody in his server actually knows what the argument is talking about, and somebody tried to debate it with me and did a horrible job at doing so. But regardless of that, they didn't even need to point that out. Like, they didn't even need to go over any of those arguments. They should have just looked at the fact that he basically says he doesn't care in his own words, and that should have already been a red flag, especially if he's calling himself immoral. Yet he's trying to teach other people about morality or politics. That's not a really good look at all, and none of his server members are going to point that out either. Why? Because they're drones. They just follow him mindlessly. They're not going to point anything out. You're going to see a recurring theme with this as well. Next we have Reddit posts here. We have Reddit posts on Paper Cash Sir doing this years ago. So he hasn't just done this in the present day, which that situation that I was talking about was just a couple days ago. He's been doing this for about maybe 1 or 2 years, and there's Reddit posts about this which have him show him doing some questionable things, and he gives a really, really bad response to these. So the first post, anti-furry named Paper Cash Sir, describing his persona along with other stuff. So I believe he claimed he was anti-furry, at least at the time. I don't really know if he does anymore, because honestly I did not ask him, but he does claim to be pretty much anti-degenerate, or whatever, which I don't really usually associate with those communities, but because Papercaster was a monarchist and I'm a monarchist as well, that's why I kind of got myself situated with them. Let's go into this. And this is pretty ironic because I've already exposed other anti-furries. So this is just another one to add to the list. He says, so obviously in this first screenshot you can see his name is Paper, whatever, femboy arc, and he has a femboy profile picture. It says, okay, so I thought about it being a cute white cat with a purple scarf with patterns on its fur that looks like doodles. So what he's referring to, at least according to the poster, is that he's referring to him having a fursona. And he's basically describing it here. Now, there could be more context that the poster could have posted here, but I think it is pretty safe to say that he is talking about his fursona. What else would he be talking about by saying about it being a cute white cat? Specifically the word it. What else would he be talking about? I think it would be pretty safe to assume that he's probably talking about a fursona. Next, the second image is him saying yes, total furry death, which is to point out the irony that he's basically anti-furry, yet he was basically describing a fursona, which we actually have an image of this fursona. Now next, the third image is somebody calling him out that he's a little bit feminine now, which shows him a screenshot of him with another femboy profile picture, and then him responding to that message right below by saying, that's me. So in a Reddit comment from about 1 year ago from apparently his Reddit account, he said, so Kuzi decided to bring out screenshots from more than a year ago with zero context to try exposing me for being some furry because he got all mad. I got into an argument with him. It's pathetic, really. Those screenshots are clear jokes with no evidence to prove they are otherwise. They happened more than a year ago. It doesn't matter. That is a really terrible defense paper. That is an absolute garbage defense. So if I punch somebody, I can just say it was a clear joke. You have no evidence to prove otherwise. Like I was just punching him. Like you have to prove otherwise that it was a joke. Ha ha. That's a really bad argument there. That's a really bad argument. Telling us to prove that it was, we have to prove that it's a joke. That's really terrible. Especially because these didn't really look like jokes at all. I wasn't laughing, nor are anybody in these comments. More recently, in his own Discord channel, he mentions the fact that he just beat up his brother. He just mentions this out of the blue in his own Discord server, which you could join from his channel, as I believe the Discord link is there. So this isn't really private information at all. You could probably join, get verified pretty easily, and find this in the chat logs. If he doesn't delete it, obviously. He says, I just beat my brother up, and a person named Afro is responding, why? And then he explains. Because he wants to act like a retarded spoiled, so I humbled him, went is his room and punched him repeatedly. Years of me having to deal with this and no one disciplines him. I need to show that I am still stronger than him, that I am not a pushover, and if he wants to act like that again, I'll beat him up again, till he learns. Inferior subhuman trying act like he is better than me. So, obviously you can see Paper has a really big issue of trying to act tough to people. He has a really big issue of that, and usually he makes it out as it's like a joke to people. But clearly it's not a joke to him, because he's beating up his own brother over it. Yeah, because your brother is maybe spoiled, maybe he makes some offhand remarks or whatever to you, doesn't give you the right of way to just beat him up. There's no excuse to that. Keep in mind, this is the same dude who will try and talk to you about morality. And there's also a lot of server members in here, which a couple of them pointed out, but they don't point out just how bad this is. and yet they will talk to you about morality. They'll try and teach you morality when they really don't make the best moral decisions themselves. At least within Paper's case, we have evidence of that. Paper, of course, mostly likes to talk about politics, but he does talk about morality too, and he gives these polls on his server where he talks about it and gives his positions. Next, he says, I should have honestly beat him up more in his lifetime. No, you shouldn't, Paper. That I think is what causes trauma from children. There's already a parenting crisis. That's not going to help. Next, Afro says, how old is he? You're a grown-ass man. Did he try to fight you? Honestly, from Afro here, he obviously realizes that there is something wrong with this by the second remark there. But honestly, I don't think he really handled it at all, because Paper replies 17 and he just says, okay. And then after that, he doesn't really say much else. Now, I don't know if there's more under this screenshot, but if that's it, like, that's not a good way to handle that. Paper says, acted like he wanted to, so I just hit him and didn't stop. Weirdly enough, it felt more like watching a scene play out rather than me actually being in a arranged state. Yeah, this doesn't sound like a mentally stable person. Yet, they're trying to teach you morality and politics. Now, rightfully so, somebody actually points out that that's not ethical, some other member of his. Which is true. But nobody on the server really, like, they should have went harder on this, okay? Beating up your brother is not like just another thing that happens on the street. That's not something you see every day, hear every day. That is bad. That is bad. There should be a much more drastic response than just this. This is nothing. This is pathetic. For somebody who beat up their brother for garbage reasons, his reason was that his brother was acting like he was so much better than him in entire life. Yeah, that's bad, but there's other ways of handling that than beating up your brother. I think that's pretty common sense. Any other person, I think, even his own server members can think that. But even his own server members are not calling that out hard enough than they should. They're just saying, man, that's not ethical. Okay, let's go back to chatting on Discord, and let's go talk about like this funny meme I found. Like what is this? Actually, I do know what this is. It's called desensitization. Okay, I can't say that very well. But basically, it's about being less sensitive. And when you're less sensitive, which most people in the world right now basically are than they ever have been in all of modern history, people like they like see a murder and they react less drastically than they should. They see something bad happen and they react more like it's just another everyday thing rather than that's something really bad that happened. And we should be more concerned about that, which is a broader issue that happens in the world today. And this is a prime example of this. People did not react well here at all. And I bet there's plenty of other members on this server that saw this and said absolutely nothing, which is disappointing, to say the least. Especially because these are people trying to teach you morality, essentially, or politics, or at least trying to debate it or whatever, trying to prove a point here. Yet they don't put basic morality into practice here. That is disappointing. That's just pathetic. Now, Paper has multiple connections to other platforms, of course, and Twitter is one of them, or X. But obviously, who's calling it X is Twitter. Now, basically, Paper was reposting from some Pokemon accounts. The thing about this is the Pokemon accounts, one of them he reposts from, Bispinane on X, also posts suggestive Pokemon art. So in the screenshot, there's suggestive art. Obviously, in the video, I'm gonna have it censored here. But Paper, why are you reposting from people that post suggestive Pokemon art? In fact, Paper told me himself that he doesn't like people who do that. Yet he's reposting art from people who post suggestive furry art. So in a sense, he is supporting people, because why else would you repost something from somebody? You you basically support them in that sense, that you give them exposure. That's how publicity works. I, as a YouTuber, obviously understand that, and he is a YouTuber as well, so he probably should. And he doesn't care. In his own words, he said before, he doesn't care. So I'm going to go over the fact that he's basically just a hypocrite here. He is reposting suggestive furry art here, basically, and yet, or basically, he's reposting suggestive Pokemon art, and he told me before that he doesn't like that. He doesn't like the suggestive. He doesn't like the corn, the all of that crap. Basically 18 plus furry Pokemon crap that happens, yet he's reposting from somebody who does that. That's very hypocritical, and there's no defense for it at all. In fact, this poster goes just a step further, and obviously this post is censored. I'm not going to reveal it much more. There is a dog, obviously, in the message, with a pride flag and a bunny. So basically, Paper reposting from somebody who likes to post, let's word this as gay Pokemon suggestive art. And Paper, I thought you were against LGBTQ. In fact, if we look on his very same Twitter here, as you can see, he has a post here which he says, "How liberal are you?" And he has an X of where LGBTQ rights are. Obviously, I don't like LGBTQ rights either, but that's a topic for another video. I'm not going to get into that. Regardless of if you agree with me on that or not, clearly Paper Cash Sir, he's just a hypocrite here. He's reposting from people who post LGBTQ crap, but yeah, he says he's against it. It's just clear hypocrisy here, and it's just set in the public as well. Now, I'm basically going to wrap this up now at this point. I think I've covered every major thing about Paper here. In short, don't come to this guy for morality or politics or whatever. These people don't know what they're talking about. This video obviously is about he has these principles here, and yet he goes against those principles publicly. Yet privately to me, he'll say he's immoral, which is not in very good faith. It's misleading people. Now, me personally, I don't really like to mislead people. So this is not somebody I would like to associate to at all. And of course, I'm making this video because I used to associate with this guy. Because obviously I had a stream where I was talking about monarchy with him. So in short, let this be an example that I do not tolerate people I associate with that do crap like this. More so, the people I associate with publicly, I'm not going to be afraid to call them out if they also are doing crap like this in public for anybody to look up here. It didn't take really that much research to find this. Maybe a little bit of asking around and scrolling in chat logs, which is not very hard to do, especially if you were there when messages like this popped up. What I'd suggest to Paper, if he's still watching by now, maybe he's watching Subway Surfers because maybe his attention span is fried at this point. What I'd suggest to him is to stop publicly saying that you're against these things, yet take actions that do different, or just stop doing this stuff. Obviously, I've given advice on how to stop to him before. He knows that. In fact, I have a long DM history where I explained all of these problems to him, and I explained some solutions as well, which I even have an argumentation just up here publicly. And he told me that he doesn't care. So if he doesn't care, then at the very least, what you can do, Paper, is stop being a liar and a hypocrite and saying you're things you're not. And I'd also hope that his server members like wake up from the matrix and realize that this guy isn't really doing much good here, and he certainly doesn't really know what morality is here, especially with that beating his own brother up part. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.